Greetings, good people. What's up? What's happening? Welcome back to TV7 Live, where we get to give you all the hottest and top trending topics. Tanzania, the aftermath that nobody saw coming. In this video, I'm going to be giving you a timeline of everything that has happened in the nation of Tanzania, ladies and gentlemen. From day one of the elections, that will be the 29th of October, up to where we are right now. What is happening in Tanzania? What happened and what happens next? We're going to be covering all that right here on TV7 Live. Then we see in the nation of Zambia, what do we see happening? We see President Hakainde Hichilema stoned while addressing a crowd. What happened there in the nation of Zambia? And also in South Africa, we see Zimbabwe opposition leader Job Sikhala arrested for transporting explosives. What is happening and what is about to happen? Yes, we're seeing responses world over from the United States, the United Nations, the African Union, the Southern African Development Community. Nobody is supporting everything that is happening. This is the aftermath that nobody saw coming.
Mtazamaji, makundi ya kutetea haki za binadamu nchini sasa yanadai kwamba zaidi ya watu 3,000 wameuawa nchini Tanzania kufuatia machafuko ya uchaguzi. Makundi hayo yakizua hofu kuwa waliouawa walizikwa kisiri katika kaburi la pamoja. Haya yanajiri huko familia ya mwalimu John Okoth Ogutu aliyeuawa nchini Tanzania ikiendelea kuhangaika wasijue iwapo watapata mwili wake ili kuuzika. Ben Kiroi ana maelezo zaidi.
Huzuni na machozi kwa familia ya John Okoth Ogutu baada ya kukutana na watetezi wa haki za kibinadamu. Familia hii ikiomba msaada na kutaka serikali ya Tanzania kuachilia mwili wa mpendwa wao aliyeuawa nchini humo.
Mr. President, please come out and assist us. We need to put a closure to this as a family. We are tortured emotionally, psychologically. Things can't move on. We are tortured. We are appealing for the body of John.
Mama Siluhu and the government of Kenya. I plead with them to fear the Lord, because without fear of the Lord, we are not going to make it. We are not going to make it.
Familia imeelezea jinsi walivyopata taarifa za kusikitisha kuhusu kuuawa kwa Ogutu.
He was on at 11:19 a.m. So when there was silence, I went to the other line and I said, "Hello bro, are you safe?" And there was no answer. It clicked to me that there is another bad news. We buried Dad in May.
John Okoth Ogutu alipigwa risasi na kuuawa nchini Tanzania kufuatia machafuko ya uchaguzi. Alhamisi, serikali ya Kenya ilikiri kuwa Ogutu aliuawa na kuhakikishia familia kwamba mipango ya kuleta mwili imeanza. Familia inataka juhudi hizo kuharakishwa.
Tuliwapea mwalimu, mbona mnatuacha mikono mitupu hata bila mwili?
What we're seeing there is a report coming from the nation of Tanzania. At least 3,000 people have lost their lives. We see most African leaders and organizations have expressed concern and condemnation over Tanzania's violent post-election crisis, with key interventions by the African Union, Southern African Development Community. However, there has been no clear, unified call for intervention, and some responses have been diplomatic or indirect. There has been calls for sanctions, but what sanctions can do? Sanctions are only going to further afflict the already afflicted people of the nation of Tanzania. So we see the Africa Union publicly stated that Tanzania elections did not meet democratic standards, citing ballot stuffing, internet blackouts, abductions, and excessive use of force against protesters. The Africa Union's observer mission, headed by former Botswana President Mogwetsi Masasi, criticized the elections and called for investigations, reforms, and restraints from Tanzania authorities. The Africa Union Commission chairperson congratulated Siluhu on her victory, but also expressed deep regret for loss of life and urged investigations into post-election violence. Now, this is being called post-election violence. We are still in the election period. Southern African Development Community SADC observers reported incidents of violence and police using firearms against protesters. SADC called for an emergency session to address the crisis and urged Tanzanian authorities to uphold democratic processes and human rights. Several SADC member states expressed their concern over the election's conduct and the crackdown on protesters. Civil society and Pan-Africa bodies, over 40 African organizations, called for prosecution of Tanzanian security officials, an international fact-finding mission, and President Siluhu's resignation. Regional and continental civil society coalitions demanded immediate reforms and accountability, framing the situation as a humanitarian catastrophe. This is what is happening right about now. We are seeing responses coming from various world leaders. Ladies and gentlemen, a few days ago, we saw Zimbabwe Vice President in the nation of Tanzania.
Situation that has happened in Tanzania, quite disturbing, and is something which has got to be avoided at all costs. I believe Tanzania has come out of age. Tanzania is also the mother of all liberation movements. When we fought for our independence, we were all based in Tanzania. So to us, it is something that we wouldn't want to see, because we call Tanzania is our mother of all liberation movements. And I am quite convinced that they will be able to sit down, iron out their differences, and move forward.
Why do we see leaders speaking now? This is the reason why. Silence is no longer neutral, ladies and gentlemen. Silence is no longer neutral. Now in a land where the internet was murdered, where 800 bodies have become a rumor, one man flies in with a pan. Yes, it's Chiwenga. And Mnangagwa sends his regards in this chaos. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm broadcasting live from Harare, kind of. And good evening, Earth. Welcome. Where? Let's start in Tanzania, where we see President Siluhu Hassan Samia has just won the election with 97.662813% of the vote. Yes, that is not an election. It's a North Korean Yelp review. The opposition boycotted, and they would call them ladies for that. Now, the internet shut off, and the death toll, the government say a few looters The opposition say over 800. Amnesty International says we can't count because the Wi-Fi is dead. Now, enter stage left is Vice President Chiwenga, the man who once removed a president with a soup and now removes awkward silences with diplomacy. He flies in to Dodoma for Samia's inauguration. Security so tight, the only thing allowed in was one pen, not a sword, not a gun, a big crystal. And the symbolism level is expert. Now, this pen is labeled reconciliation. So Chiwenga leans in and hands the pen to Samia and says, let's write a new chapter, preferably without the blood. Then, on the way out, he drops this absolute mic. What happened here is disturbing. We were based in Tanzania during the liberation struggle. We would prefer it if you stop killing each other. In other words, he's saying, we owe you for the AKs in the 70s, but maybe chill with the AKs in the 2025. Chiwenga comes back to Zimbabwe at the airport, presser there, and he's asked, so, you condemn violence? I condemn anything that makes flying commercial more stressful. Now X is calling this diplomatic class. One user writes, Chiwenga just gave Samia a pen and the entire continent a TED talk.
Zaidi ya watu 3,000 wameuawa nchini Tanzania kufuatia machafuko ya uchaguzi. Makundi hayo yakizua hofu kuwa waliouawa walizikwa kisiri katika kaburi la pamoja.
And now for the timeline. Election day, 29 October 2025. Tanzania goes into the polls in what is supposed to be a celebration of democracy. But almost immediately, reports flooded in of voter roll irregularities, internet blackouts, and opposition groups are barred from participation. Protests break out in major cities as citizens challenged the illegitimacy of the vote. October 30 to 31, we see violence erupting. By the next day, those protest rallies met a harsh response. Security forces opened fire, and Rise Group quickly reported hundreds of deaths across the country. The government maintained order, but witnesses spoke of mass graves and hospital locked down as families searched for their loved ones. November 1 to November 2, results and escalation. This is where we see the results coming in and the escalation. When the results were produced, Samia Siluhu claiming a near unanimous victory, outrage grows, demonstrations intensify. International voices, including the African Union, demanded calm and transparency from the Tanzanian authorities. November 3 to November 5, crackdown on dissent. Police launch mass arrests. Over 240 protest leaders and opposition figures face treason charges, with potential death penalties looming. Tanzania's government insisted the crackdown was about peace, but human rights groups disagree, citing evidence of torture and enforced disappearances. November 6 to November 8, international outcry. African and international leaders condemn the violence. Kenya warned Tanzania to protect foreign nationals. SADC and Africa Union declared the election deeply flawed and urged investigations. Civil society groups called for international intervention. Meanwhile, police launched manhunts for remaining opposition leaders. What happens next? Of course, Tanzania 2025 election will be remembered for its crisis, not its celebration. Will the region push for reforms, or will this crackdown set a new precedent for politics in Africa? Now, in a land where the internet was
for the latest on the arrest of
where 800. Now, what is happening in the nation of Zambia? Zambian President Hakainde Hichilema was reportedly stoned by unidentified people while addressing residents in Chingola in the Copper Belt region of Zambia during an event on 8 November 2025. The incident caused disruption and required police intervention to restore order following a riot and arson that broke out in the district the same day. This attack involving stones thrown at President reflects rising tensions and public unrest in parts of Zambia, a situation compounded by the recent political grievances and socio-economic challenges under his administration. The president has been both praised for early reforms and criticized for later moves seen as repressive or failing to deliver on campaign promises. Now, in a relaxed context of tension, 2 men were recently sentenced to 2 years in prison for attempting to use witchcraft to harm President Hichilema, further illustrating the political pressure surrounding his presidency. Overall, the stone-throwing incident underscores a volatile environment for President Hichilema as he navigates public dissatisfaction and security challenges in the nation of Zambia. Ladies and gentlemen,
Na tumfuane mkwai.
It's news time. This is Zimbo Live TV. Breaking news.
Na tumfuane mkwai.
For the latest on the arrest of prominent Zimbabwean politician Job Sikhala, we are now joined on the phone by his attorney, Eric Mabuza. And Eric, thank you so much for your time this evening here on SABC News. Maybe let's start off here. Is it true that Job Sikhala has indeed been arrested in South Africa, in the capital?
Yeah, good evening. I can confirm that indeed he's currently in detention over allegations of being in possession of explosives. Obviously, it's an allegation which he denies. He says that it seems that there's foul play because when he went out with his uncle for dinner, he was not carrying any explosives, but somehow those explosives found themselves in his car when he was driving out.
So are these the charges he's facing in South Africa for carrying explosives in South Africa?
Yes, that's correct.
Have you been able to speak to him? What is he saying about this issue?
He was arrested last night, so we made contact with him this morning, and we went to consult with him, and he gave us the version that I'm telling you, that he denies that he was in possession of explosives. Somehow he suspects that there was foul play because he didn't come here to buy explosives. He came here for medical treatment, and he's not involved in any firearms.
Job Sikhala arrested in South Africa. What happened? Now here are the full details. Job Sikhala, prominent Zimbabwean opposition leader, arrested in South Africa, Pretoria, on charges of illegally possessing explosives while traveling with a relative Ford Fiesta. Police, acting on a tip-off, stopped his vehicle and reportedly discovered 26 blasting cartridges and 15 capped fuse connectors. Sikhala and another man aged 78 were detained and are expected to appear in the Pretoria Magistrate Court on Monday. Sikhala was stopped at a roadblock after meeting friends. The explosives were allegedly discovered during the vehicle search. Those close to him, including lawyers and family, claim he was not carrying explosives and suggest a possible foul play or political motives behind the arrest. Given Sikhala's history as a vocal critic of Zimbabwean President Emmerson Mnangagwa, Sikhala had previously endured nearly 600 days in Zimbabwean prison for charges seen by supporters as politically motivated. Political allies and advocacy groups, including Sikhala's attorney, argue the arrest could be a setup pointing to Sikhala's recent experiences with surveillance and violence against his property in Zimbabwe. Lawyers from Zimbabwe have reportedly coordinated with South African attorneys to provide Sikhala legal assistance, and both supporters and critics are closely watching his up and coming court hearing.